The first test we're going to talk about is the date difference test, and we're going to be looking for differences between the invoice and sales order files, and mostly taking a look for situations where there are invoices that have not been developed yet or drafted for sales orders, and that would be the not billed section and the customer's not billed section. And also the customer interest lost, which is again for not billing in a timely manner, the billing to order analysis. So basically, we're kind of looking for invoices and matching that against orders and looking for timing differences, as well as things that just simply were not billed. It's more of an efficiency test, and it's an order to cash type of recovery if you can find it. Some of the key statements that we have below are essentially joining the files together, the invoice file and the sales order file, and we're starting off with the sales order file and lining that up with the actual invoice file to get the invoice date in this below left box, part of the script. One thing that you definitely should remember is to close secondary whenever you are joining tables together. Once that file is opened up, on the right here, we're calculating an interest lost. And the interest lost is the percent that we're going to set multiplied by the timing difference, the difference between the invoice date and the order date, if it is, actually an invoice if it's basically greater than zero. So if the invoice date minus the order date is greater than zero. Moving into ACL, I want to open up the date difference field first. And in this date difference test, we can scroll down here. I wanted to note a couple of things we've changed. First off, I've moved my interest calculation out to 5 digits, and as you notice, every amount and every percentage and every divide by, I am actually going out to 5 digits everywhere I can. And I'm doing that in these calculations more or less to fool ACL. ACL, if I did have, instead of, in this case, 100 without the .00000, ACL doesn't do the best of jobs at rounding in those situations, or better, it will round as opposed to keeping it in this more 5 digits format. And really, it's not its fault. I mean, you're basically not telling it that it has the 5 digits, in this case 6 digits, so I needed to shift that over. But with the 5 digits there, it is giving it enough room to calculate interest lost on smaller invoice values, especially if we're dealing with, say, 3.5% in this case. So it's a key note in any sort of calculation that you're doing that gets out that far in decimal place. Now, running the date difference test, I'm just going to right-click and run that test. I'm going to select the invoice file as it's telling me, the sales order file as it's telling me, invoice date, sales order number, and I'm going to change this to 3.5% because 7% is a little bit high for today's day and time. This book was written back about 7 years ago, so it is a little dated from that perspective. Select the order number, the order extended price, order date, and customer number field, again just following the steps along. By selecting OK, we're presented with a final calculation. And as you notice, a lot of these interest lost are very, very low numbers, 1 cent, 2 cents, etc. Now, it does add up, and we'll look at a stratification in a second, but what I wanted to do is walk through the 4 files that are produced. The billing to order analysis is basically going to take those orders, match it up to the invoices, and calculate an interest lost for any situation like this, where there's a timing difference between the invoice date and the order date, and that's that interest loss. Now again, it's calculating it on $27, so it's not a lot of money, but there are 229 days that have gone by before invoicing. And again, we'll just take a look at that. So going, further on, The customer interest lost is now a summary of that by customer. So if you wanted to take a look at that by customer, the customers not billed, we'll get to in a second. The not billed is basically every order number where there, is basically not an invoice associated with it. And the customers not billed is a summary of those transactions. So those are the four tables, all really around customers not being billed and the timing difference for not being billed. Another thing that this test will do, and if you go to the log file, you'll notice there's a stratify. There's a stratification then of that invoice less order date and the interest lost accordingly. So, definitely take a look at that. Take a look at the files themselves as well to get a good perspective of this test.